Good afternoon, everyone. It is truly lovely to have you with us. And I'm just going to quickly introduce myself and then introduce you to these two people next to me. They both have extraordinary stories to tell you. So my name is Judith Pucci, and I am a Tribute Center walking tour guide. So this afternoon, you are going to hear stories from two of my fellow guides. As you'll hear, these stories go beyond the historic events of September 11th, and instead they explore the personal costs of that day. So next to me are Loreen Solito and Vinnie Doherty. Vinnie was a captain with the New York City Fire Department. He served the city for 25 years, and he spent most of that time in Special Operations, which is a division of highly trained firefighters. I think I asked you once to quickly just define it for me, and he said, think of it this way: when you, meaning all of us, need help, we call the fire department. When the fire department needs help, they call Special Operations. Loreen's son, Matthew, worked for Cantor Fitzgerald, a bond trading firm. Matthew worked near the top of the North Tower. That was the first building to be attacked that morning. So we're going to begin with Vinnie, though, and I'm just going to take another moment to quickly set the scene for you. For the fire department, the attacks begin when the night shift is ending and the day shift is beginning. It's because of this overlap that there were hundreds of firefighters down here at the Trade Center so quickly that morning, because if they were in a firehouse, they were down here, whether they were on duty or off, and Vinnie was one of them. All yours.
Well, thank you all for just giving us a little bit of your time to listen to our stories. The firefighter that was up there, Jonathan Ielpi, he came from my firehouse. We're a Special Operations firehouse, 2 units, Special Operations. They were on the first call as soon as the towers got hit. As a matter of fact, one of my firefighters was standing outside of the firehouse in Maspeth, Queens, on a sort of a plateau that could see over into the city. He saw it go in, and as soon as he came in, he beat the Queens dispatcher from dispatching us. He gave us, called the alarm, and we were out. They were out of the firehouse. On that day, I was not working. I was actually working in another part of the city. I was going out of town on department business, on our USAR, Urban Search and Rescue. As soon as I saw it hit, I was at the LaGuardia Airport, and I knew we had to leave. Myself and another captain immediately ran out, commandeered a van, got across the Triborough Bridge, and I was the logistics chief, or the deputy logistics chief for our urban search and rescue equipment, highly trained personnel. There were 400 of us in special ops, highly trained on this equipment that is sponsored by the Federal Emergency Management Agency from the government. And we were supposed to respond, 29 teams respond across the country. We responded into Oklahoma City. We responded to hurricanes. We responded to all sorts of disasters. Never once did I think I'd be using that equipment for us in New York City. There are 12,000 of us, 40,000 police officers. We have enough capability. Was I wrong? I got the equipment down there. I got over to Queens, where the equipment is stored. Quickly realized that my men had already started loading it. We had 2 tractor-trailer loads of it. And my guy said, we have no tractors. I says, knowing the area, being a probie in that area, commercial area in Queens, I immediately got into my battalion car, went to the nearest diner, saw 2 big rigs out there, got into the door, and I said, I'm in uniform now. I opened the door, and it's all hardcore truckers. And I go, yo! Who owns those trucks out there? 2 guys immediately turned around, like, who is that? And I said, we do. I said, what are you doing? We're stuck here. We have no place to go. We can't get out of the city. I said, how would you like to come work for the city? No pay and no benefits. I need to get equipment downtown. They said they couldn't get up out of the seats fast enough. They dropped their loads, came back, hooked up, and we were down there. Being down there, I operated down there, saw a lot. No one person should see what we saw down there. But I want to give you one further story about miracles. As bad and as chaotic and as catastrophic as that day was, 343 firefighters, 60 law enforcement, 37 of them from Port Authority Police Department, 23 of them from New York City Police Department, all were murdered that day. We have 12,000 people in the fire department, 400 special operations, 104 of that 343 were from special operations. So they wouldn't let me stay down there too long. I was able to stay down operating, rescue, recovery for 2 weeks straight. I finally got home. They forced me home because I had to start training up new people to fill the gap. When I got home, where I live, a civil service ghetto. That's how I can explain it. Just outside the city, a village, firemen, cops, blue-collar workers, Main Street USA. Everybody knows everybody. I'm outside my house. My neighbor, 4 doors down, comes out, sees me. Yo, Vinny, have I got a story for you? You will never believe it. This is Ralph, retired Nassau County cop. He's got 2 daughters. His oldest daughter, married, 5-year-old child. Live up in Connecticut with her husband. Her husband worked for Cantor Fitzgerald. Cantor Fitzgerald, 300 employees, 3 floors, North Tower, ground zero of the first plane that hit the North to hit. Instantly wiped out. Her husband was one of them. At the same time, a young firefighter, 8 months on the job. Worked up, assigned to an engine company, northern Manhattan, on the west side. Didn't get down there for the first 2 after the second tower fell, after the north tower fell, the second tower. All hands on deck. Immediate recall. 12,000 firefighters come back in. He responded down. He was put to work on the west side. His officer, after about an hour of working, said, let's take a break. Let's hydrate. It's warm out. We're going to be here for a long time. As soon as he sat down, somewhere just west of the buildings, a piece of paper comes out of the sky. He doesn't know where it came from. He can't explain it. But it rolled down right to his feet. He picked that piece of paper up. He recognized the name on that piece of paper. That piece of paper was the canceled check that Ralph's daughter's husband had just bought their 5th anniversary flowers with. He took that check and he brought that home to Ralph. Now I'm getting this third person 2 weeks later. I didn't know anything about this. He brought that up to his daughter. I can't explain that. Just like a lot of miracles, I can't explain. And I hope he has the picture that I have. Do you have the picture? Okay. Okay, you could take it down. This is a story that happened to me this 9/11. My son is on the job, came on right after 9/11. He's got 14 years on the job now. His house, I specifically put him down into the middle of Brooklyn, Brownsville area, going to learn the job, going to learn it right, a lot of duty. His house wasn't impacted on 9/11 because they were too far away, but they did operate there. So what they do on 9/11 is they come into the city. They have a breakfast, they rent out a bus, and all his guys that are off duty are in dress uniforms. They come down to support 10 and 10 right across the street here. My firehouse, we were heavily impacted, 19 guys. We stay in our firehouse. We don't want anything to do with the politicians. All right? So he's coming down here. He's right in front of 10 and 10, right across the street here. You can look outside on Liberty Street. He looks up. Best place you could see the tower, Tower 1. He looks up. He says, wow, I got to get a picture of this. So you've all seen that. Hopefully you came down Liberty Street and you saw the tower. He takes his iPhone and goes up and looks at it, and he's got his guys all around him. He looks down and says, wow. Hey, look at this. Look at this. This is the picture he saw on 9/11. That's on his phone. And that's this 9/11. I can't explain that, and I haven't seen anybody else or heard anybody else that has seen that picture. This place, sacred, hallowed. This place is a cemetery for us, for the families. And what we do at the Tribute Center, what we do as guides, not only helps you and helps our guys to be remembered, it also helps us to talk about and to keep their memories alive. Thank you.
Vinnie mentioned, again, Cantor Fitzgerald. It was a bond trading firm, and it was located near the top of the North Tower. When rescue workers, and really that morning it was predominantly going way up into the building as far as they could go, were firefighters. And in the North Tower, that first building, they were confronted with an insurmountable obstacle, which is that the plane had severed access to all stairways and elevators, meaning that if you were sufficiently below the impact zone, you could still use a stairway. If you were above, that's it was severed. So Cantor Fitzgerald was where, as I mentioned to you before, Loreen's son Matthew once worked, and therefore Cantor was above the point of impact. That meant that Matthew and over 1,300 others simply had no way out. Loreen.
Thank you. I had left my home very early that morning. It was the first couple of days of school. I am an educator. But back at our home, the phone went off just as my husband was leaving for his office. It was just up before 9 o'clock in the morning. Mom, Dad, this is your son, Matthew. My husband raced in. He picked up the phone. Matthew continued. A plane hit the World Trade Center. I'm stuck here. I can't get out. Matt said, what are you doing? Just hang up the phone and get out of the building. Now, Dad, you can't understand. You don't understand, excuse me. I'm trapped. I'm just calling to tell you that I love you. And the phone went dead. Matthew was 23 years old. He had just graduated from the University of Vermont with a major in economics. He had had many other job offers. I can share with you that at the time he was a freshman in high school, he wanted to be a trader and he wanted to be on Wall Street. And even though he was offered other positions, like so many of the other people that were down here at the towers, once he walked in that building, he felt he was on top of the world and he just loved every moment, every single moment. We never thought, any of us, that they were gone. So Tuesday and Wednesday and even Thursday, it was a search and recovery. On Thursday evening, the president of Cantor Fitzgerald reached out to the approximately 700 people in his organization that they knew were in the buildings, confirmed in the buildings. The phone call came in that night and they told us, or he told us, Howard Ludnick, that there was no way that any of them in the building could have survived, and that we had to understand that they were gone. It was very difficult even hearing those words, because you have to understand there were no remains. You know, you get a call that your loved one is gone and you take other appropriate steps. We had none of that. And it was still almost deep inside of me as a mom saying, somewhere, somehow, they're going to come home. We're going to find them somewhere. The first time I left my house was early that Friday morning. I live in a very small town in rural New Jersey, and we're only about 400 families. It was early in the morning. I left my street, and I went on to the main thoroughfare, and I had to stop driving. It was an amazing experience, and one I think that I know I will never forget. In front of me were lines and lines of America flags. They were on every building. They were on every office face. They were on homes. And all down the street were placards. United we stand. God bless America. We're with you. We will never forget you. God bless the victims. And I had to pull over. I couldn't drive. You see, to that point, I was a mother, and I was looking for my son. I then realized that I'm an American, and my country was attacked, and that all of us had lost these people. It was a very, very, very meaningful moment for me, and it really did make me understand that somehow I had to find a new normal, that the 9/11 community, especially the 9/11 families, had to find a new normal and to learn to exist, not just as a parent or a family member that had the terrible loss of a loved one, but that I was a 9/11 family member and I lost my son because of an attack. New normal became for me something that happened, I guess if I think back around, it was January 14th, 2002. There was a knock on the door, and it was about 10 o'clock at night, and it was our pastor and our police captain. They came in and told us that Matthew had been recovered. New normal for me was when I was told that they had no further information to give me. You see, 9/11 was a federal crime scene, and the government had control out of everything. So I did not know where my son's remains were, how I would get them, who to contact. Nothing was available to us at that moment. Again, new normal. New normal became discussing with other family members how they were going to bury remains. What are we going to do if there's a conflict? Things that I never in a million years thought that I would ever be processing, but new normal. Like Vinny, I had to really learn how to heal and to make a life. And one of the things that I'm most proud of is our MCS Foundation. It was established in my son's name. And since 2002, we have given out over 90 awards to deserving young people based on academics, financial need, and community service. We also do a lot in training here with Tribute Center in the hopes that we can help educators develop programs not only to teach 9/11 what happened and why it happened, but we're also taking a look at terrorism, tolerance, different areas where we can help teachers make a difference in very, very sensitive topics. I can say that I am very proud also that we've tried to help young people realize that they can make a difference, that we can all make a difference in Washington, not based on our politics, but about caring about our country and that we have a say. The other thing we did was we went to Washington. I try to tell people that it wasn't because I was anyone special. If you think back to the 9/11 families, most of them were very young. They had young children, they were young traders. There were a group of us that had adult children or were spouses with children that were out of the home. And we went to Washington in the hopes that we could lobby for an investigation. It was there that I saw Washington in operation for all that is good and all that is challenging. But I will tell you that I served on the 9/11 Steering Commission Family Committee. We had 42 recommendations. 24 of them were put into effect right away. The committee still does meet and still regulates what is going on in this country. And my husband, who was here with me today, and I have continued to be involved in those areas in a nonpartisan way that have to do with the security of our country and the intelligence. I have to let you know that as of this day, there are 1,100 families that have not received any notification. The process is still ongoing. I know that on February 15th, 2015, another Matthew from New Jersey was brought home to his parents. Matthew Yarnow was identified after 14 years. And speaking on behalf of his mother and a news conference, she said at least it was some closure for her. People ask me all the time why I do this, how I can get up here and speak. First of all, I do it to honor the other committees that are the other areas of the 9/11 community. To the firemen and the first responders, to everyone that has been there and held us in the palm of their hands, I can't tell you what that means to me. I also know that anybody that is connected here, whether it's the staff that's running the museum, whether it's all of us in the 9/11 community, I find that there are 3 R's that are always connected with this hallowed space. That is the remembrance, the rebuilding, and the renewal. And if you can leave here today seeing all those 3, I think that your visit will be a positive one. I want to thank you for coming. I want you to know how much I appreciate you letting me tell my story and letting me talk about Matthew. Thank you.
We always leave some time at the end, and we do it for you. You now get to ask questions. So I'm going to urge you all not to be shy, okay? I'll give you a moment to collect your thoughts. That's it. Who's going to be first? Oh, wonderful, good.
Question for Vinny, have you retired? Are you retired now?
Yes, I am. 2006. Yeah. Injuries, they put me out of the job. 25 years in, 58. 25 years, 58 days. Not that I count. I live through my son now.
Anyone else? Yes.
Where are all the remnants of this horrible day where what is left is still being researched to possibly find remains? Where are they doing this?
Well, the remains are housed here in the museum. And I can tell you that anytime there is a new DNA test, just as what happened with Matthew in 2015, that scientific knowledge is taken by the New York Coroner's Office, and the testing is done. Even though most of those remains were recovered early on. It's just that the testing wasn't sophisticated enough to do an ID.
So the city is taking it over, even though you said it was a federal...
It was a federal crime scene, but the New York Coroner's Office is in charge of handling the remains, and any notification that family get is from the New York Coroner's Office.
So the search for remains at this point is officially completed. If in some way remains happen to be come across, they will of course try to identify them. But the actual collecting of remains is a completed project.
So is there a place where there are piles of
Remains.
remains?
No, they're held very respectfully
Yeah.
downstairs, okay? And we have a room that's not open to the public. You might have known that it was controversial within the families, but when you have 3,000 of anybody, there's
Yeah.
always going to be difference of opinions about where those unidentified remains should have been housed. And it was decided that they would be part of the museum. You do not see them. When you go downstairs, there's a beautiful art piece with a quotation. And that actually, behind there, just so you know when you go downstairs, the remains of the victims, unidentified, are there.
It's that long blue wall that you
Yes.
see down
Thank you.
at bedrock.
Yeah.
And there was someone else right over here, please.
3,000 is a large and terrible number, but it seems, again, kind of small when you think about the 50,000 people that were employed in the buildings and however many hundreds of thousands there might have been on the site. How does it happen that that relatively small number, or such a large number, survived?
I could address some of that anyway. Well, 50,000 is what it was built for after the 93 bombing. There were a lot of people who didn't come back. So I think the official word is somewhere down around 25,000. Somewhere in that is a good number. And also there's other factors involved. In 93, took us over 8 hours to evacuate both towers. In 2001, self-evacuation. Mostly because it's a complicated tower, both towers complicated. They have what's called sky lobbies. And it's Port Authority, New York, New Jersey, meaning by state agency. They do not have to comply with New York City code. And they didn't in 93. After the bombing in 93, we made them, and they agreed. And I believe they have made a contribution of about $500 million to that effort to make a safety valve or bring safety into the towers. And I point to one specific thing. With everything they did with lighting, floor fire wardens, things like that, to comply with our codes for the safety throughout the city of high-rises, they had 2 mandatory drills, fire drills. What did that do? When we come in and do a fire drill, we shut the elevators off. You got to make your way out. These people now knew how to get out. In '93, all they knew were elevators. Okay? And the stairs are under, it's not the code, but they did the best. And I put that one thing, fire drills, as a very important part of the puzzle for why almost 25,000 people made it out of those buildings.
Also, because of the time of day, the
Time of day.
towers were about 1/3 occupied, so that contributed to. One last question, please.
The bombing in '93 led, some evolutions of the fire drill processes and some of the code changes and things like that. What has evolved since 2001? What's changed now?
The buildings themselves and the construction, in the security, in the materials used. The Tower 1 now, they have a cement that is, it's supposed to be the best. This is the first time they ever used it, but it's supposed to be the strength of it. I don't think anything knocked down this building. It's the way the original towers were built also. And I could go and I could give you a 2-hour discussion on that, but we don't have the time. But there are 2 reports out if you wanted to know about them, and they're from NIST, National Institute of Science and
Standards and Technology.
Standards and Technology. And they put out the report. You could go online, look it up. You get hardcover or you could get CDs or DVDs. And I have them. I use them in my research constantly. Great reports, and it tells you the whole story.
NIST also, NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology. If you're interested in a very specific explanation of why the towers fell, that's where you go, and they make it very clear. I would love for us to continue, but if you do have additional questions, they will be right outside that exit door, so please do not be shy about approaching them and talking with them. Before we go, I just would like to thank you all, not only for choosing to spend some of your time with us, but also because you are truly essential to our storytelling. It is with you that we take a piece of a brutal and obscene day, and by doing what we have just done, by sharing it, we turn it into something of a life-affirming experience. So for that, we thank you very much.